So, I'm trans. Depending on how chronically online you are, you probably just made a couple base assumptions about me. Do I wear skirts? Do I like thigh-high socks? Yeah, I like thigh-high socks. Do I know how to code? Yeah, I mean, I taught myself C++ over the pandemic. I haven't really done much with it other than hobby coding stuff. I'm learning Godot. It's been pretty fun. Do I have the shark? His name is Pringles. Do I like pickles? Yeah, I love a good dill pickle. I'll mess up some fried pickles at Fitz's. St. Louis represent. Do I like anime? Yeah, I like it. I don't really watch it that much, but the few shows that I do sink my time into, I tend to really enjoy. I mean, Evangelion is like one of my favorite pieces of media ever. Do I have an OnlyFans? Well, not yet. Did I play and enjoy Celeste? Yeah, I love Celeste. I died like 3,000 times in my first playthrough, but like I like the challenge. I like the story it had to tell. It was a really fun game. I liked it. I love the art style. Like great game. 10 out of 10. Do I like the cult classic 2010 action role-playing video game Fallout New Vegas? Okay, look, I played New Vegas. It's actually the first Fallout game I ever played. And I remember liking it when I first picked it up in 2014 and I beat it, but I remember not being particularly engrossed with the story or the world or any of the characters I encountered. I literally beat the game, thought, neat, and then moved on. You see, this was still the early to mid 2010s, and at that time, New Vegas hadn't quite acquired the retroactive critical acclaim that it has now. In high school, most of the people I surrounded myself with were of the opinion that Fallout 3 was the superior, more well-rounded game, and that New Vegas was a fun but buggy and forgettable expansion. I remember sitting at the school lunch table and a friend of mine told me with his whole chest that I needed to play Fallout 3. It's so much better than New Vegas. His own words. And he was right. I mean, my first Fallout 3 run was like the most immersed I had gotten into a video game at that point in my life. At least one of the times, up there with like Skyrim and Little Big Planet 2. You know, I liked the overly long and restrictive intro, where you steep yourself in this unique and interesting setting within a vault. You're given context for why you're here, what your purpose is, what's expected of you, and then out of nowhere, it's ripped from you. All you've ever known, the one person who could help you understand your place, your own father, has disappeared. The moment where you first step out of the vault in Fallout 3, to this day, is one of my strongest memories in gaming. The fish out of water feeling as you look at this strange alien world before you. The move from rigid certainty to a massive sandbox with only one major goal. Find your dad. Bethesda gets a whole lot of shit for their unbearably long intro sequences, and believe me, I feel the same, but this one stuck the landing for me, and it landed hard. So throughout Fallout 3's story, you're introduced to a pretty strong, consistent cast of characters. You get to learn who they are, understand their motivations, then root for them and fall in love with them. That's what made me love Fallout 3, the consistent cast of characters. New Vegas doesn't have that. New Vegas' cast of characters in the main storyline literally doesn't exist. For the most part, it feels like every character I interacted with, I only interacted with them once before just moving on. There's a few exceptions, and of course I'm glossing over the companion storylines entirely, but there's nothing that made me want to seek those out in my initial run. Flash forward a decade. I'm 26 now. I'm also a woman. My tastes in RPGs have fundamentally changed. If anything, I'm a little burnt out on the concept of an open world action game with RPG elements. I can still get behind them, and I really enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077, even pre-Phantom Liberty, again, citing those engrossing characters and the unique setting they inhabit. But, I mean, as much as I liked Horizon Zero Dawn's world, story, and characters, the usual, mark spot on map, go do thing, it just kind of got tiresome real quick. The RPGs I love nowadays call back to the turn-based tabletop rule sets that inspired them, like Baldur's Gate 3 and 40k Rogue Trader. After actually getting into tabletop RPGs myself and GMing both 5e and Rogue Trader, GURPS is probably next, I just love building characters and rolling dice. Just rolling dice to do shit. I love gambling. Sometimes you just gotta roll the dice. I've even tried old school real-time with pause CRPGs like Planescape Torment and even modern revivals through Dragon Age Origins, but as deep as those games can be, I just can't get behind real-time with pause. If I wanted to play an RTS, I'd play Supreme Commander. Even Bethesda's older titles are still functionally CRPGs at their core. The Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall's approach to character building is genuinely one of the deepest character systems I've ever seen in a game. Probably second to Cataclysm, Dark Days Ahead, and other autistic roguelikes. Morrowind is where we see the system start to streamline a little bit, but there's still complex and interesting build options out there. And then there's Skyrim, which is just Far Cry without guns. Also spell-making rules, and I hope Todd brings it back. I want my nuke spells. So after getting into CRPGs and games that take influence from them, I don't know if I can really ever get into a Bethesda-style action RPG. I don't even know if I'd enjoy Fallout 3 the same as I did at 16. New Vegas supposedly takes a lot more influence from Fallout's CRPG roots, but having not really played much of Fallout 1 or 2, I can't really say how well that shines through. But still, in the decade since my first real full New Vegas run, the game's memory in the zeitgeist has been completely altered. Where Fallout 3 was considered one of Bethesda's strongest titles, and New Vegas a buggy, rushed mess, Fallout 3's reputation has dwindled to frankly comical lows, while the latter is viewed as literally one of the greatest video games ever made. Also, a lot of trans women really like it. So, not wanting the powers that be to revoke my estradiol pills and my creased trans flag gifted to me by a college ex-boyfriend, in this video, I'm giving New Vegas a second chance. So, if there's anything that my previous Escape from Tarkov video taught me, it's the value of seeing things through others' eyes. EFT was a game I'd written off until I sat down and played it with close friends who could show me how to enjoy it. And perhaps, just maybe, this could work for New Vegas. Of course, New Vegas is a single-player game ignoring mods, so it's not like I can start a lobby and invite friends directly into my save. So, having worked in documentary filmmaking for so much of my adult life, we're taking it a bit old school. We'll start with like the easiest question. Who are you, and when did you first play New Vegas?
Are we doing that now? Oh, sorry. So my name is Tony, and I first played New Vegas when it came out, like in 2010. I played it for a little bit, got confused, and then I didn't touch it again until I was like 16. At that point, I think I played Fallout 3, and I liked it a lot. So I just went into New Vegas, and I played it like the whole way through, DLCs and everything. I thought it was really cool.
I got New Vegas as a gift from our dad, just as a reward for being cool, and also he just bought me a desktop, and I guess he wanted to get me a game to go along with it.
I went to a party that my mom had to go to for her boss. The boss's kid was just playing Fallout 3 like the entire time on his Xbox. Didn't know what the fucking name of the game was. Like didn't know at all. Didn't ask because I was a stupid kid. And I went home and I'm like, damn, I really wanted to play that. No clue what the fucking game was. Not a single idea. No clue what an RPG. I had no clue what any of those words meant. I just knew like Gears of War and Halo, and that was like all I played. So then, I got the computer, and Fallout New Vegas had come out, and I heard about it in Game Informer. I read a paper copy of Game Informer. I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm gonna go steal that.
I think what drew me in was, I don't know, at that point in time I was just really obsessed with like apocalyptic settings, like I watched the second Mad Max movie. These games were like really inspired by that setting. So I think that's what kind of just, drew me in. I don't know, the leather armor design in 3, and that's what's also used in New Vegas, is just like Max's outfit in the second movie. It looks really cool.
It was like an open world where I get to pick whatever the fuck I did, and that was like really, really new. Like I had no clue what the fuck any of that shit was. Like at the time, I didn't know what other game was like it. I was 9. Like I didn't know what the fuck to Google to get like game like Fallout New Vegas. I loved everything about it. The setting, the story, the really kind of shittily animated intro cinematic. Like it's just all bomb. Like it was phenomenal. And this is gonna sound stupid. I was a really dumb fucking kid. I didn't even know like Vegas or like I didn't even know that was a place. Like
You thought they made it up for the game?
Yes, yeah. I was like, Jesus, this world building's awesome. Like they fucking.
Yeah, and I never really did a whole lot with the side quests. I did a couple. I accidentally did the Big Mountain DLC because I discovered that I had that as part of the bundle. And I did that early on in the game, and that sucked, but it was fun. Discovering how non-linear everything is. You do not have to do everything in any particular order, and also a lot of characters aren't like unkillable. I discovered this on my very first playthrough when I threw a stick of dynamite, and I discovered that those things have weight in the game and don't get thrown as far, so I accidentally blew up an important character.
I had like this really shitty computer, like this like Dell Optiplex, and it was the first time I ever got a DMCA strike through my ISP. My parents were not happy with me.
Oh my god.
And I think I was about like 8 or 9 years old.
I mean, that's kind of crazy that you figured out how to like pirate video games at 8 or 9 years old or whatever.
Oh, I've been pirating music, like Frostwire. Like I was a big Frostwire kid. I loved Frostwire. So I was great at stealing stuff because I was poor.
Okay, yeah. That's valid.
My favorite character is I think it's Boone, because he starts out really quiet, and once you hang out with him like a lot, like he's your companion, he opens up a bit more, and he has like this really, I don't know, I just like his like his story, like he's just like this very like disheveled man who just like saw a lot of like messed up stuff.
There's one that is in the Dead Money DLC named Dog or God. And I don't want to get too much into his character because I think you're going to play the DLC. He's like this super mutant with like a dissociative identity disorder. And he like switches who he is based on just like different shit. And I love him. I fucking love him. I think that whenever you run into him, you're probably going to fuck with him. Because I love him. He's the GOAT.
The king. I love the king.
What did you like about the king? Let's talk about that.
You know, from my perspective, he's just the realest motherfucker alive. What can I say? He gives you this cool robot dog if you follow his quests.
My advice would be to try the hardcore mode. That is my favorite way to play the game because you have to use like all the resources in the game. I feel like with a lot of those like Bethesda style RPGs, like there's like all this food and stuff, right? But like you never really need to use it because like you have like healing potions and stim packs. In hardcore mode, you have to actually watch your hunger and like your thirst gauge and like how much you sleep and all that. So, and the game's a bit harder, so it makes you use your resources. Like
my advice would be to not get through it too quickly. Don't blow through the content too quickly. Just play it and enjoy it and do the shit that you want to do. Don't try to get through it. Just walk. Don't run.
Don't be afraid of killing. Maybe on the second playthrough or second attempted playthrough, I probably just made a decision that, I'm just gonna kill anybody that I deem bad.
Yeah, so literally, don't be afraid to be a fucking murderer.
Yeah, just murder. It's great.
Cool.
It feels really cool to do it. And you get really cool stuff from it, too.
I think that New Vegas is my favorite RPG ever. I love it. Like I said, I grew up with it. It makes me very happy that even though you didn't like it, you're doing it again to see if your opinion has changed. I think that's really bomb.
Play the game with an open heart and an open mind, Maple.
I will certainly try. Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
After talking with my friends, I had a much stronger idea why they all love New Vegas as much as they did. In my conversations with them, they painted the picture of a game carried by its robust, nonlinear narrative and a deep, well-rounded cast of characters with stories that you can dive headfirst into. They described how deep the game's systems can be and how the world reacts to every little thing you do. New Vegas, to them, is a game where you can be anyone and do anything, and the world will shift to compensate. All precisely the opposite of what I experienced every time I tried before. Either way, primed with this newfound insight into how I can better engage with this game, I booted up New Vegas and began a new save. It's at this point we should address the Nexus mods-sized elephant in the room. Should I run mods on this playthrough? I asked my friends again, gathering their thoughts. It was mixed across the board. One friend stayed pretty firm in the vanilla camp and suggested I maybe install a few community bug fixes, and another seemed outright disgusted at the idea of playing New Vegas without a complete mod pack to modernize the game. I weighed it, pondered it, downright meditated on it, but decided to go with the former. Bug fixes, and that's it. No gameplay mods, no story mods, just enough to keep the game from crashing. New Vegas' mod community is a huge, gargantuan reason why the game has the legacy and staying power it does. I've always personally joked that Bethesda doesn't sell games, they sell DIY kits. But I felt I needed the purest experience possible to see if I can really enjoy this game at its heart. If I can't enjoy vanilla New Vegas, I probably won't like it with a 12-page mod list either. Extending from that, what about the DLC? I thought about this one for a while too, but decided that since my very first run, I didn't have access to any DLC, I have an obligation to play them, since they're a huge reason people love New Vegas. Even if the video ends up 5 times as long because of it, even if each one could be made into its own full video, it's important that I play them and see how they integrate into the whole. So without further ado, let's get shot in the head. My run began the same as everyone else's. The late great Matthew Perry domes me with a 9 and leaves me in a shallow grave outside Good Springs, Nevada. I woke up, disoriented, in Doc Mitchell's home practice in Good Springs proper. He takes me through the song and dance, asking questions and building out my character. Now's as good a time as any to introduce you to Ruth. I've been getting into baseball lately, so I figured I'd have some fun with this character build, making something that both references the sport I love and explores combat options I don't normally pick in Fallout games. Melee and explosives. Pitching and hitting. A build to make Otani proud. My friend Viv also joined me for the start of this journey, commenting and subtly guiding me around.
Pick that up.
I spent a good bit of time wandering around Good Springs. I talked with Victor, learned the story of my recovery, and thanked him for pulling me up and getting me to a doctor in time to save my life. I talked with Easy Pete on the way into the saloon and learned about him, his former life as a prospector, and his perspective on the political state of the Mojave, given the NCR and Legion coming to blows. Wait, okay, my parents are gonna watch this. I gotta, explain some terminology. Okay, so the New California Republic, or NCR, is a nation-state occupying former Southern California with territorial claims all across the West Coast, stretching as far east as the Mojave Desert as things currently stand. They're an old world style of government, set up roughly the same as the modern-day US federal government. They have a Congress, a president, a judicial system, and an organized and outfitted military. NCR citizens possess a surprisingly high standard of living in the post-nuclear hellscape, with healthcare, public transit, and the right to vote. The NCR's chief rival in the Mojave is Caesar's Legion, an authoritarian empire led by a man who read about ancient Rome once and thought it sounded neat as hell. They've spent most of their time conquering and absorbing tribes across the American Southwest, and have ambitions to take the Mojave along with the still operational Hoover Dam. They recently came to blows with the NCR over the dam, a battle they narrowly lost, so the front lines remain frozen save for occasional skirmishes between scouting parties. Standing between the bull and the bear sits the independent city-state of New Vegas, led by centuries-old billionaire Robert House, the enigmatic founder and CEO of Robco. With the city of Vegas surviving nuclear war relatively unscathed, Mr. House wants to rule over it as a Muskian technocrat and expand it into a grand tech empire within the wasteland so that he may save humanity from itself. As of the start of the game, the NCR has somewhat more friendly diplomatic relations with the city and maintains an embassy on the Strip. The NCR also maintains control of Hoover Dam. Anyway, back to the game. Inside, I talked to Sunny Smiles, did her tutorial quests, and familiarized myself with my melee-focused build. I've only ever done gun builds in Fallout and games like it, so the different approach to combat took some getting used to. Sunny then sends me to Trudy, the saloon owner, who educates me on the town's conflict with the local powder gangers, spurred on by a man named Ringo. I find the man, learn his story, offer to help, then unite the town in repelling a powder ganger assault. I loot the powder gangers after the fight, finding a baseball bat to fit my build. I sold a bunch of gear to the local vendor and almost sold the baseball bat, considering it had low condition and generally didn't compare favorably to my starter machete. But Viv convinced me to commit to the baseball build and save the bat, so I could later repair and mod it.
The next time you find another baseball bat...
Yeah, I mean, I can repair it, you're right. But if I find a cool one, I will definitely take it, though. Well, I mean, I guess I'll go buy it back from Chad. Fuck it, I got money. You're right, you got me thinking about it now. As I wrapped up my brief time in Good Springs, I took some time to pencil down my thoughts on everything so far. I noticed that I already had an easier time engaging with the RPG mechanics, and took the time to learn each character and their thoughts on the world around them. My previously held convictions that New Vegas lacked deep characters suddenly held no water, and I saw just how authentic and grounded each of them were, and how I spent enough time with them to get to know them and care about their struggles. After exploring Good Springs a little more, and visiting the schoolhouse to loot the safe, I set off for Prim, following the path Benny and his goons might have taken. Along the way, I fought off a few loose powder gangers and local wildlife, and explored an abandoned building or two. Upon reaching Prim, I encountered an NCR trooper for the first time, who warned me of the town's descent into chaos after bandits took control. I told him I could handle myself and entered the town, hoping to get some info from the Mojave Express branch there regarding my failed delivery of the Platinum chip. Almost immediately, I dispatched the few bandits roaming the main promenade. I took a look inside the Mojave Express building, which stood abandoned, save for a broken iBot I couldn't repair. Looking for answers, I entered the Vicky and Vance casino next door. It's there that I meet Johnson Nash, the manager of the local Mojave Express branch. I fill him in on what's gone down, and he informs me, in kind, on the odd circumstances surrounding the delivery assignment. I learned there were 5 other deliveries in the same order, and how mine, the Platinum chip, was the only one that didn't make it to its destination. He also told me of a courier before me that refused the job upon seeing my name on the list. Odd. Nash goes on to tell me where I can find more info on the man who shot me, along with the great cons accompanying him. I'd have to find Deputy Beagle, one of the last remaining lawmen in Prim, currently held hostage in a hotel across the street. I made my way over, ready for a fight. My baseball bat made short work of the first dude I saw, and I looted a sick baseball hat with glasses from him to round out the baseball theme. I pushed further into the hotel, dispatching bandits left and right, in ways that would undoubtedly make Seiya Suzuki proud. I finally liberated Beagle, and learned a little more about the folks who left me for dead. He also let me know that Prim needed a force to establish law and order again, whether it's a new sheriff, or the NCR coming in force for martial law. Leaning toward the latter, I talked with the local NCR contingent, who pointed me to the Mojave outpost for the requisite troops and supplies to pull off such a thing. Dealing with more bandits and wildlife, and maxing out my inventory space, I made my way to the outpost. Upon arrival, I talked with Major Knight and tried to convince him to send bodies to Prim, failing in the process due to my low barter skill. So I left the convo, drank a beer, and returned with a higher charisma stat, and successfully swayed him. I also talked with Ranger Jackson to grab a little bit of work while I'm here, and Ranger Ghost, who wanted me to take a look at the town of Nipton if I ever passed through there on my way east. I obliged both and dealt with some ants on the northern road. Before setting out for Nipton, I stopped by the outpost bar for a quick drink and to chat with the locals. It's there that I met Cass, a caravaner by trade, and one of many stuck at the outpost awaiting NCR escorts for the road to New Vegas. She had an endearingly foul mouth and pointed me to the Crimson Caravan over in New Vegas for extra work, if I ever needed it. I made my way to Nipton. Look, we all know how this plays out, lottery guy and all. After encountering Caesar's Legion forces who laid waste to the town, I explored the town hall, making my way up to the mayor's office. Browsing his computer terminal, I learned he had a hand in selling off the town to the Legion in exchange for a direct payout of 8,000 caps. From there, I traveled north to Novak. I stopped at Ranger Station Charlie for a night's rest, chatted up the locals, then kept on. I arrived in Novak, then wandered into the motel office. I talked with Jeannie, who in turn referred me to this dude, Manny Vargas, for info on Benny. I also bought a room. I went to the top of the dinosaur to find him, only to stumble into Boone. Tony's favorite character. I chatted him up, accepted his task to find who sold his wife into slavery, then sleuthed my way into finding evidence to pin the blame on Jeannie. I walked her out front of the big dino, watched her get domed, and now I have Boone. I also ran into Victor again, the robot who saved my life back in Good Springs. He was also shaking his spurs over to New Vegas, so we'll be running into each other a lot. I talked with Manny while running the Boone quest, and he said he'd give me the information I wanted if I cleared the nearby Repcon site of ghouls that had taken root. So I head over to Repcon, do one of my least favorite quests in the game, and send these fuckers into the stratosphere. Manny then tells me the gang had left for Boulder City, supposedly to settle up on a debt that Benny still owed the cons traveling with him. I think it's safe to say that I'm a lot more invested this time around. I think the time spent getting into TTRPGs really did prime me for what New Vegas had in store. You see, in previous runs I kept doing super generalist builds, jack of all trades and master of none, with maybe a focus on guns and speech. I still kept speech this time around just because it's so crazy useful at key moments in this game, but going in with a real character concept made combat so much more enjoyable. Melee is shitloads more fun than I ever thought it could be, and the thrill of one-shotting ghouls with a Louisville slugger never gets old. I'm also finding myself more invested in every character. Each of them has a nuanced perspective on the NCR, the Legion, and the state of the Mojave as a whole. Even further, I'm realizing what my character's thoughts on the world would be. Seeing the NCR propaganda posters at the Mojave Outpost made me realize this Americana-esque old world culture might be something my homegrown all-star hitter would root for, at least initially. At this point, I still had nothing set in stone regarding what ending path I wanted to go down, and while the NCR ending made sense given this, it still opened up a shitload of compelling character arcs for Ruth. The only major worry, as far as my own personal enjoyment goes, was quests like Come Fly With Me. It felt like such a raisin in this cookie, so much in exchange for so little, but I also remembered that I chose to do the quest to get the information I needed from Manny. I could have taken the right perks, or gone into his room and looked up his hidden notes, but none of that seemed immediately obvious to me at this time. So into the Ghoul Grinder I went. I don't know if I hate or even dislike this quest, but the dungeon design has so much backtracking and repetition, it just got stale quickly. I found myself just wanting it to be over so I can get on with the parts of the game I found interesting. Either way, with everything wrapped up, I departed Novak to the north toward Boulder City. Helios 1 was on the way, so I figured, hey, fuck it, let's see what's going on over there. I lied to get inside and met Fantastic, who tasked me with getting the facility running at peak performance again. On the way out to the solar farm, I ran into Ignacio Rivas, who revealed himself as a member of the Followers of the Apocalypse, a group dedicated to peace activism throughout the Mojave. I won his trust, and with my unique position as an outsider, I had the choice of who benefits most from the extra power generated from this facility. I could follow the NCR's interest and send the power to the Strip and their military base at McCarran Field, or even activate Archimedes, giving them access to a powerful weapon in the fight against the Legion. I could even harness that power for myself, should I choose. Ignacio believed, however, that the only correct option would be equal distribution throughout the Mojave, and in this way, everyone benefits. I thought about what my character would do in this situation, initially thinking she might want to benefit the NCR directly. Then I realized, meeting this man and seeing how passionate and sincere he was would at least make her consider equal distribution. When the time finally came, I ended up choosing the latter, sending power across the region with no bias, rather than the NCR's direct interests. Ignacio thanked me, and I won some brownie points with the followers. It's here where I started to see some core themes in New Vegas coalesce, specifically the concept of power. Practical power, like the electricity generated by Helios 1 and the Hoover Dam, but also political power. The NCR represents the old world concept of power, a series of checks and balances, Republican ideals of representative democracy, and the guiding hand of the free market. Mr. House and his army of Securitrons represent technocratic power, the idea that only those with exceptional technical skill are worthy to rule. And the Legion, well, the Legion is power for power's sake. To them, an iron fist is the only way forward for humanity. Subjugation, enslavement, all tools utilized in ancient civilizations to grow empires from fertile river valleys. And in this river valley, at the dawn of a new human era, the Legion sees an obvious choice. The only choice in their eyes. With my business in Helios 1 done, I hit the road to Boulder City. My time in Boulder City ended as soon as it began. Upon entering the town, I found a lone NCR trooper paying his respects at a memorial for the Battle of the Hoover Dam, and took some time to pay my respects as well. My hometown hero all-star would definitely have a Support Our Troops ribbon on her 2004 Dodge Neon. I learned a little more about Boulder City from the trooper and the local saloon owner. A once thriving city, the NCR left it in ruins after a scorched earth demolition, a sacrifice made to eliminate Legion soldiers lured into the town. After the war, only the workers at the local concrete plant stayed. And even they left after Deathclaws took over Quarry Junction and cut off their supply of limestone. Aside from the War Memorial and the saloon, there wasn't much left here. I pushed further into the city and came across an NCR lieutenant guarding a cordoned-off section of the town. He told me that a few of his troops had been captured and held hostage in the area, and I offered to bust him out. Waiting for nightfall, I snuck in, moving behind the building where the hostages were held, then moved in to release them and finish off the Great Khans. One of them had a note on his body, a lead on Benny's location, the Tops Casino in the Strip. Before leaving, I checked out the town a little more and ran into Victor again, claiming to have not seen Benny. My business in Boulder done, I started on the path to the distant lights of the New Vegas Strip. On the walk there, I chatted up Boone. We talked about his service in the NCR's 1st Recon Sniper Battalion, where he was stationed, and what the officers were like. He wouldn't budge on topics like Bitter Springs and what happened to his wife. Later, I stopped by the 188 trading post and picked up some supplies and muddy buddies for the road. It's there that I met Veronica, a mysterious hooded woman who, after basic introductions, asked if she could accompany me on the road to see the world. I decided, yeah, fuck it, and dismissed Boone to take her with me. Almost immediately, she told me she's actually a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, one tasked with traveling topside to gather supplies and return to their hidden bunker. With a new companion in tow, I started back on the road west to New Vegas. On the way into Freeside, I stumbled across a peculiar spot, fenced-in farmland speckled with shacks and farmhouses. Walking toward it, the location name faded onto my screen. The NCR Sharecropper Farms. Now, you might not think much of this location, and with very good reason. It pretty much only exists to point you toward Vault 34. But the very idea of this existing, and specifically being a sharecropping farm, really sent my head spiraling. If you remember from history class, sharecropping is a farming arrangement where landlords provide land for a tenant to farm in exchange for a portion of the crops produced on said land. It rose to prominence in the US following the Civil War, where former slaves, in need of work, entered sharecropping arrangements with the southern landowning class in need of laborers. These arrangements could often be exploitative, with high interest rates and deductions made from a harvest based on housing and supply costs. One bad season or low crop prices could put a sharecropper into practical debt slavery. Even worse, in the Jim Crow era South, nothing could stop a white landowner from signing a black sharecropper, then booting them before the harvest, keeping the entire crop for himself without paying a dime in labor, and more than likely keeping that lien on said sharecropper. That landowner could rest assured that a biased court system would almost never side with a black sharecropper. My great-grandmother grew up in a sharecropping family in rural Arkansas in the 1920s, shortly before the Great Depression. She wrote about helping her dad on the farm, picking 200 pounds of cotton on her 8th birthday. Her family constantly struggled, always packing up and moving and living off farming loans. They finally broke free of the system during Roosevelt's New Deal, and the wounds mostly healed, but the scars were immense. She lost both parents at a young age, likely due to the harsh working conditions and stringent lifestyle, and subsequently dealt with the heinous socioeconomic conditions of being a Southern housewife well into her adulthood, and even had to briefly return to sharecropping later in her 30s. So imagine my surprise seeing it in a game. This goofy nuclear cowboy game spurred me to read my great-grandmother's memoir and understand what life was like for her. I ended up helping out the NCR sharecroppers because they needed it. I wandered through a vault nearly dying of radiation poisoning just to help them get some water. I had to really think about this. My character, up to this point, had been a true NCR hero, a League of Their Own starlet, but if seeing such an exploitative system being utilized by a fledgling government had such an effect on me, God knows what my character would be thinking. Anyway, after having my rads and wounds tended to at the New Vegas Medical Clinic, I stepped into Freeside, took a look around, and popped my head into the old Mormon fort. I talked with a few of the followers, easy standouts being Beatrix Russell, Arcade Gannon, and Julie Farkas, the latter of whom asked me to find 2 men and sober them up, so that they might use their talents to solve some of Freeside's problems. I found those addicts, helped them out, and convinced them to head to the fort and seek aid from the followers. Julie's grateful. Before I continued on, I chatted with Veronica more, and learned more about her. She's actively coming to grips with the way the outside world works, and how, to the average wastelander, the Brotherhood may as well be a myth. I also learned that her Brotherhood tinkering skills let her function as a mobile workbench, which fucking rules. From there, I decided there's no more beating around the bush. I walked on over to the strip gate to head inside and confront Benny. But it turned out the requirement to enter the strip was 2,000 caps, not 1,000, like I remembered. So anyway, back to the grind. Heeding Brother Dearest's advice, I paid my way to an audience with the king, looking for work. He was happy to take me on and tasked me with a sting operation on one of the bodyguards working in Freeside. I'm to investigate, see what's up, and see why he kept getting so much repeat business. Turns out, homie was staging attacks to make him seem tougher and more reliable than he actually is. The king was grateful and gave me another mission. Some Freeside locals were attacked, and he wanted me to get to the bottom of it. I headed up to the Mormon fort and approached the victims, questioning them about what they saw. All they remembered were young, buff guys, one being a lieutenant. I returned to the king with my findings, and we deduced that the assailants had to be NCR soldiers. The king asked me to dive further, find out why they're in Freeside, and what caused the attack. I visited squatter camps around the area and Julie at the fort. Every piece of info I received led to a small, unassuming building where plainclothes NCR operators handed out food and supplies to NCR citizens residing in Freeside. They won't give food to locals. Supposedly, when they reached out to the king to coordinate relief, the king's men beat their envoy and turned him away. I approached the king with this info, and in another twist, I found out some of the king's men took matters into their own hands, assumed the envoy was a spy, and kicked the shit out of him, and never even told the king what went down. The king is shocked, and then one of his men, Pacer, jumped the gun yet again and attacked the NCR outpost. I'm sent in to cool things down. I arrived. Kings lay dead while NCR troopers fired upon them from the watchtower. I lowered my weapon and approached the leader, Elizabeth Kieran, and let her know that the king is willing to negotiate, and that the beating was a misunderstanding. She begrudgingly accepted. The king's pleased with the outcome, and in exchange for all I've done for him, I get one favor. I chose to have him help me break into the strip. He was happy to, and sent me to Mick and Ralph's to get squared away. Additionally, I looked into ways to help Rex, the king's ailing cybernetic dog, and he decided to lend him to me on the promise that I'll take him to the one doctor who can fix him, located in Jacobstown. I didn't know Rex didn't count toward the single companion maximum, so now I had 2 companions to help me out. Sick. With that settled, I flashed my counterfeit passport to the robot guards and arrived on the strip. I paid a visit to the holdout weapons guy to get a switchblade. Then I went into the tops, surrendered my non-holdouts, and approached Benny.
What in the goddamn?
We all know how this goes.
Let's keep this in the groove, hey? Smooth moves like smooth little babies.
He invites you upstairs, blows you off, and you're left to investigate. I wandered over to his room and encountered Yes Man, the central character for the independent New Vegas ending. I exhausted all of his dialogue options and got a full picture of Benny's plan. It's here where I thought about that theme again, power, and how the independent New Vegas ending is a way for the player to express their own idea of power. Do you reject authority altogether, or embrace it? I felt this crossroads for my character when I encountered Yes Man. Ruth is a hometown hero, baseball all-star, a kid with spunk and moxie who hopes Hitler gets what's coming to him, and for our boys to show him what they're made of in Normandy. But she's seen what the NCR truly is, and how exploitative its systems can be. She knows that at the end of the day, a distant power ruling over the people of the Mojave could never be anything but exploitative. Right there, right then, I decided that the independent New Vegas ending made the most sense for Ruth. With my future uncertain, I went downstairs and turned 20 caps into 300 by fucking destroying at blackjack, and lost it all the next turn. A few days into this run, I took a break from playing and recording footage one weekend for a 2-city road trip, starting with seeing my girlfriend in Columbia, Missouri. It was a trip I badly needed, and an opportunity to let some of my thoughts on the game marinate so far. I spent some quality time with my girlfriend, the Freddie Mercury to my David Bowie, #1 Indiana Jones fan, ska historian, and connoisseur. We walked the streets of downtown Columbia, browsed hit wrecks, grabbed some Pizza Tree, incredible pizza by the way, like one of the best veggie slices I've ever had, and after grabbing snacks and Logboat Lager on the way home, we settled in for a movie. As I sat there watching The Book of Life with the woman I love, a movie fundamentally about family and legacy, I thought about how New Vegas had connected me with my own ancestor, someone I barely got to know in her old age. I thought about her struggles, how they mirrored mine. I wondered what she'd think of me, my transition. I thought about how she picked up a guitar from a Sears catalog for $7, and how the songs she played and sang connected her to her own mother. I don't know what she'd think of my music, but every time I play, I feel a little more connected myself. I thought about my grandpa, the son of that great-grandmother who passed away a few days before my 25th birthday last year. I knew him pretty well as a kid, but lost touch when I grew into my teens and adulthood. When I transitioned, I just assumed he wouldn't be supportive and never bothered to reconnect. Now, every time I play a Bob Dylan song, I feel him sitting next to me, clapping along. I thought about the daughter of my grandpa, my mom, who I wasn't on speaking terms with for 4 years after I dropped out of college. I thought about that time of my life where I let spite just drive me, guide my every action, and how over time we both grew up into better people and reconnected, and how I can't imagine life without her now. The next morning, I drove to Springfield, Illinois for a barbecue with my friends Viv and Cameron, both of whom you might remember from earlier in the video. I brought my guitar and smuggled exactly 1 can of logboat over the river to share a sip or two. We all gathered around the fire, and I sang and strummed out some requests, mostly Mom Jean's because Cameron seemed to really like my Scott Pilgrim cover. I polished off that logboat, ate some Bali veggie dogs, and played some Magic. After everyone else had gone home, I stayed the night and watched Night at the Museum with Viv and Cam, and thought about how beautiful it is to have friends like them. To be able to take trips like these, and sleep on mattresses in cities hours from my own home, and how new that is to me. I drove home. I picked up the game where I left off and set out for Cottonwood Cove to find Benny, who fled toward the Legion Fort. En route, I discovered an entire irradiated town guarded by NCR troops. They advised against going through the town, so I circumvented it as best as I could. Almost on cue, a Legion squad assaulted their roadblock, so gunfire provided the soundtrack to my sneaking around the irradiated town, dispatching a few stray ghouls. I arrived in Cottonwood Cove, flashed my party invite to the bouncers, and gained access to the fort. I took a solemn walk past the palisades and overburdened slaves to Caesar's tent, and faced the man himself, with Benny, bound and on his knees, off to the side. Caesar returned the platinum chip that he confiscated from Benny to me, under the condition that I enter and destroy an abandoned Lucky 38 bunker within the fort itself. He also bestowed the honor of deciding how Benny dies. I begrudgingly accepted working with an open despot, for now. Before I took off for the bunker, I talked with Benny, in one of my last chances to do so. He implored that, no matter what happened to him, I needed to pick up where he left off with Yes Man, to rebuild New Vegas into something free from Mr. House or anyone's authority. He knew he was cooked. Escape was never an option, unless I could provide him with a stealth boy and bobby pin. I actually did try this, but got jumped by every surrounding guard, so that option was off the table. I cracked open the bunker and strided in with Veronica and Rex, and for the first time this run, I encountered Mr. House. A little disappointed that I big-timed him back in the strip, he brushed it aside, and with the same commanding authority as Caesar, he demanded I use the platinum chip to upload a firmware upgrade to his robot army, bolstering their weapons and defensive capabilities. My gang and I subdued the bunker's robot security forces, and then I obliged Mr. House, for now, and uploaded the firmware upgrade. Mr. House seemed suitably convinced that I did it for him, but in reality, I'm investing in what will soon be my own army through Yes Man. I returned to Caesar's tent and let him know what happened. He gave me one last chance to decide Benny's fate, with the default being crucifixion. I weighed the options and decided to face Benny myself in the fort's arena, armed with nothing but machetes. I knew with my high melee skill I'd whoop his ass, but it still felt like the option with the most dignity, given the circumstances. From there, I told Caesar our business was complete.
Mark my words, you piece of shit.
And returned to the strip. My next order of business, the hostile takeover of the Lucky 38. I strided on in and ignored House completely. I activated the terminal that took me over to his secret side room, and then another that took me directly to his control room, dodging Securitron fire the whole time. One bonk later, and he's gone. I returned to Yes Man and told him that it's time to rock. The moment I stepped out of the Lucky 38, with the first major part of the plan complete, I gazed upon the strip before me, and felt the weight of what I had just done. For all intents and purposes, the strip belonged to me now. The army of upgraded Securitrons all obey me. Anything I do now revolves around uniting the rest of the Mojave behind me, and anything I do now is my own choice. This is the first point of the game where there's no main quest item that takes priority. I can truly do whatever I desire now. The first task I elected to knock out was that old favor to the king. Head over to Jacobstown and get help for Rex. Time to head west. I took the long, winding road to Jacobstown to find the doctor that the king pointed me to, and discovered a small community of super mutants. They're all chill and let me wander around so long as I don't cause a ruckus. I then found Dr. Henry, who told me Rex needs a new brain. I also picked up a quest from him, helping us research for developing a cure for the Nightkin's mental deterioration. I whacked some weird snake-dog hybrids, all of whom happened to be snacking on a busted stealth boy. I let the doc know what I've done and found, and let him perform a quick experiment on Lily, the super mutant companion I just met. The experiment succeeded, and the Nightkin wanted in. I told them that they can't just take the Mark II stealth boy outright, and for good reason they didn't like that. A fight ensued, a fight that I won. With that wrapped up, I let the doc continue letting Lily wear the Mark II, a way to accelerate his search to find a cure, at the risk of Lily's continued deterioration. Back to Rex. I left Jacobstown for a sec to find Old Lady Gibson, who I had met back in Novak, and asked if she can help in any way. Surprisingly, she was game, and offered one of her older junkyard dogs that she already had plans to put down. It was a suitable brain for Rex, in exchange for 700 caps and the morbid euthanization of an elderly canine. I wasn't hurting for cash at this point, so I took the offer and returned to Dr. Henry at Jacobstown. He slapped in the new brain like a new alternator on a 2007 Subaru Outback, and just like that, Rex was back in business. I slid back over to Freeside to show off the now healthy Rex to the king, who was more than ecstatic. Given the lengths I went to in caring for the little guy, he let me keep him for just a little while longer. Brad was right, this guy rules. Finally, I decided to start on the quest to rally the Mojave to my side, against both the NCR and the Legion, starting with the Brotherhood of Steel, the most iconic poster boy faction in all of Fallout. I grabbed Veronica, then traveled to Hidden Valley, and made an introduction using Veronica to speed things up a notch. I met with Paladin Ramos and Elder McNamara. Everyone was cautious around me as an outsider, but with the precarious situation they faced, they seemed to be accepting of my help. I took on McNamara's task of finding the mission tapes of a few lost patrols, the few they're able to perform in this isolationist era of theirs. Before I left, I'm cut off by Paladin Harton, who wanted me to investigate ways to have McNamara ousted as the Elder. Frustrated with McNamara's hermit policies, one that he believed were a detriment to the Brotherhood's ability to project power in the Mojave, he offered himself and the Brotherhood as a potential ally in the battle to come, all in exchange for ousting McNamara. On the way out, I brought this up to Ramos, who pointed me to a senior scribe maintaining the data stores in the bunker, data stores where I might find histories of previous elders being removed from power. I met this scribe, who was actively troubleshooting a virus that seemed to be corrupting the stores. I hopped in to help, and several tries later, we had the virus isolated, and I could look up the info I needed. I found 3 entries. One discusses an elder's removal for violating something called the chain that binds. I held on to this info for now, and left to retrieve those patrol's holotapes. The Repcon patrol was a breeze, but the other 2 were such a difficulty spike that I had to take a break to go eat a pizza. I later just shelved the game that night. Things felt a little slower now. I didn't feel as locked in as before, but that could be post-vacation blues clouding my enjoyment. I finally hit the part of the story where a lot of the momentum shifts from external to internal motivation, and beyond there, it's up to me to put in what I want to get out of this game. I still had some highlights, finishing Benny's arc, finally encountering Caesar himself, and making introductions with the Brotherhood of Steel. I still felt the weight of killing Mr. House, the decision with the most gravity and effect on the world thus far. I had a feeling that same weight would be a common theme going into these faction quests. A couple days later, I picked up the game again, grabbed the 2 remaining Brotherhood patrol tapes, and returned to Hidden Valley. Before I approached McNamara, though, I asked Ramos for more information on the chain that binds, and he kindly gave me access to the database entry on how it worked. Essentially a rigid chain of command system, a violation of direct orders, or a superior skipping ranks to give orders to lower-ranking members without going through the middle ranks first, counts as a violation of the chain that binds, and is grounds for removal from your post. Taking this info and the mission tapes directly to Hardin, we concluded that McNamara violated the chain that binds in sending out these patrols without Hardin's knowledge. The Brotherhood gives McNamara the boot, and installs Hardin as the new elder for the chapter. It's at this point I learned that the Brotherhood won't ally with you if you picked the wildcard ending, so I have no choice but to tell Yes Man that I'd like to ignore them for now, and move on. I felt pretty disappointed that I couldn't bring along such an iconic faction for the ending I wanted, but I guess I felt alright with how it played out. Next up, I poked around the Crimson Caravan Company for some side work, taking Cass's advice. I met Alice McLafferty, who promptly put me to work delivering invoices, making a dude fire himself, and buying Cass's failed caravan. Cass, now distraught after I convinced her to sell, decided to join me, and I gained a new companion. Then I tried to redeem myself at the Top's blackjack table once again, and almost immediately lost everything I put in. I found myself at another crossroads regarding what direction to take, so I decided not to rush the main quest, and instead hop into one of the DLCs. I really wanted to try Dead Money. A few friends heavily recommended I give it a shot despite its mixed reputation as the black sheep of New Vegas' expansions. One friend even gifted me a copy of just Dead Money years ago in one of their many attempts to get me to enjoy New Vegas. The prompt I received when I reached the bunker, though, reminded me that the recommended level for it was 20 and above. I was already at level 18 at the time with a tankier melee build, so I probably could have made it work, but I decided to save it for later and head north to start the Honest Hearts DLC. I dismissed Cass and Rex, stripped down my inventory to the weight limit, and set out with the Happy Trails caravan north towards Zion National Park in Utah. The White Legs ambush hit and decimated the party, leaving just myself. I ran into Follows Chalk, a member of the Dead Horses tribe, who offered to lead me back to their camp. On the way there, I stopped by a welcome booth and found a cool park ranger hat with some neat bonuses. I finally met the man, the myth, and the manosphere legend, Joshua Graham. He welcomed me and offered to help me leave the valley and return to the Mojave. But first, I had to assist him and another new Canaanite, Daniel, and locate various supplies we'll need to leave the valley. I should probably mention now that I've played Honest Hearts before in one of my other attempts to get New Vegas. I remembered it being lackluster, a point most of my friends agreed with me on. So far, Joshua Graham was an easy standout solely through Keith Sarabaika's performance. He's really the only reason anyone remembers Honest Hearts with any kind of fondness. He carries this entire DLC. I was still interested to see how I felt about Honest Hearts this time around, now that I was actively digging into the themes of New Vegas, but I kept my expectations low. I kept on, gathering all the supplies Daniel needed to escort his tribe, the Soros, from the valley. When I finally met him, he requested a few more supplies, like a map to Grand Staircase, and asked if I could sabotage a few more white leg ambushes and traps to make the journey a little easier. I obliged, but Graham confronted me before leaving the Narrows. He confessed that, in reality, he doesn't want to leave the valley. He wants to see the white legs purged from it, using Christ's expulsion of merchants and money changers from the Temple of Jerusalem as a vehicle for his metaphor. This sets up the central choice in Honest Hearts. Do I side with Daniel and do what I can to help him escape from Zion, or do I side with Graham and take the fight to the White Legs, allowing everyone to stay? I accomplished Daniel's extra errands and returned to him. I chose to side with him, reasoning that it would lead to less unnecessary danger and death, something my character might vaguely see as the best choice. The time came, and I ran through the valley with Graham at my side, rescuing Soros and schwacking White Legs with their 1911s. At the final confrontation with the White Legs leader, Salt Upon Wounds, I used my newly acquired Speech 100 skill to convince him to lay down his arms and leave Zion in peace. Daniel and the Soros escaped through the Pine Creek tunnel, and I collapsed the tunnel behind them as they had asked, preventing the White Legs from following them through. Honest Hearts is a bit of a nothing burger. It's relatively quick, so not overstaying its welcome is one of the few positives I can give. The core choice at the center of the story is so binary compared to the options you have even in the core game, and most of the characters are too flat to sink my teeth into. Additionally, the portrayal of different tribes definitely rubbed me the wrong way, and the lack of agency they have in the story is something even Josh Sawyer stated he regrets.
Yeah, how the tribes are portrayed, how the quests work, because they're really super simplified, making the tribes have more of a voice in what's going on, not making it purely be about Daniel or Joshua.
The obvious exceptions are Joshua Graham and Randall Clark, the latter of which you only get hints of through the survivalist caches. Again, Keith Sarabaika's performance carries this whole story, and Graham as a character made this at the very least worth my time.
Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it even to the foundation.
I really wish I had more to say about Honest Hearts. I wish I could dig into its themes, its characters, its setting, but there's not much there I can latch onto to begin with. For the first DLC of this run, it's not a great first impression. If it wasn't for one character, and I mean literally one character, I don't think I would have given it a shot to begin with. Gameplay-wise though, Honest Hearts does do some interesting things. I low-key fucked with the weight limit it places on you to even start the quest, since it forced me to take a look at all the junk I was hoarding and clean out everything except that which might actually help me. It even kept me in character, since a huge and heavy super sludge I had found was impossible to bring with me, forcing me to stay with my trustworthy, lightweight baseball bat. The emphasis on survival and scavenging also felt neat to see. Zion was abound with tons of wild flora and fauna that I would need to rely on to perform quests and keep myself healed and happy while I wandered through it. Next session, I swaggered back to the Mojave, and decided to follow Cassidy's questline a little. I knew this would be a relatively quick session since I had rolled Pokemon hyperfixation on my neurodivergence check the day prior, and I had to get back to Sinnoh pronto. I linked up with Cassidy, and we traveled through the wreckages of her caravans, tracking everything back to the Van Graffs and the Crimson Caravan. Then we concocted a plan to gather evidence to bring to the NCR, dealing both parties a blow and fate harder than raw, violent revenge. Getting the Crimson Caravan evidence was easy enough. I grabbed a stealth boy, snuck into their bunks at night, then saved scum to pickpocket check until I grabbed the safe key. Simple as. The Van Graffs were a little trickier. I did their quests, did the guard mission, and the delivery errand, but stopped short of bringing cash to Jean-Baptiste for a warm reunion. I tried to apply the same mindset I did to the Crimson Caravan and slapped on a stealth boy, grabbed a key, and snuck into their back-of-house operation. But I literally couldn't get their evidence without a super high lockpick or science skill, which blows because I threw all my points into pretty much everything else. I made the hard choice to come back to this when I'm at a high enough level to tackle it. My quick session over, I realized it was just enough to put me over the 100-hour mark in my total time spent playing New Vegas on Steam, which was cool, I guess. The few things the session did reveal were pretty evident. The first being that I can't rush these companion side quests. Some things are meant to come back to later, that's the nature of RPGs. The second, for as much as I enjoy engaging with New Vegas' RPG mechanics now that I have a taste for them, there are without a doubt certain builds and skills that make this game incredibly easy. Even with my carefree, all-star, designated hitter build, I chose to take Speech 100. Lockpick and science are absolutely those kinds of skills, and the choice to not take them earlier genuinely hampered me in Cassidy's quest. Again, nothing forced me into this, and all I really needed to do was level up either of those skills to at least a level where I can make up the difference with magazine buffs. I think it's still important to acknowledge the choice it gave me at that moment, though, which is to either level up the skills or fight an entire building full of mobsters in heavy armor wielding People Melter 3000s. Now that I had suitably leveled my character, I stumbled back into the abandoned Brotherhood of Steel bunker to begin the Dead Money DLC. Upon entering, I found the source of the Sierra Madre radio signal, then, seconds later, fell unconscious as a poison gas flooded the room. I woke up after an indeterminate amount of time in a dark and strange villa, with the Sierra Madre casino standing monolithic on the horizon. Before me stood a hologram of a man named Father Elijah, a name I remembered from my conversations with Veronica. He was her former mentor in the Brotherhood. He informed me that I had a bomb collar strapped around my neck, that the air was toxic and would slowly deplete my health to just above the point of death, and that I needed to find 3 of his other prisoners scattered throughout the villa, so that we might have the manpower to penetrate the Sierra Madre and the secrets it holds. I talked with this man for what felt like 10 minutes straight, learning every bit of lore and gameplay tips he had in store, purely from my own poking and prodding. He talks a lot, and personally I didn't mind it, but listening to my friends Aiden and Jackson discussing Taco Bell on the Discord call made it pretty funny.
He taco in my bell to like...
I will be controversial. I'm not that big on any of the sauces, unfortunately.
Elijah pointed me toward Dog, another collared prisoner, and one I remembered Cameron talking about in my interview with them. I traveled to his hideout and found him trapped in a cage. I explored further, blowing up radio after radio, and entered the basement to a voice drawing me inside. It's a tape, and part of its recording instructed me to play it by the cage to unlock it. I did so. God woke up, and Dog took the back seat. They're nightkin suffering from dissociative identity disorder, occupied by 2 personalities. Dog is brutal and violent, completely obedient to Elijah as his master. God, the one I'm talking to now, is the more independent thinking one, and actively works to keep Dog at bay and undermine Elijah wherever he can. Another crazy long dialogue tree later, I convinced God to use the key around his neck to unlock his own cage, without resorting to bringing Dog out to exploit the latter's more obedient nature. From there, I grabbed the 2 other companions, Dean Domino, a ghoul, pre-war entertainer, and explosives expert, and Christine, a technically adept mute woman. I kept through the quest, following Elijah's instructions. I placed each character in their designated spots necessary to open the gates to the Sierra Madre. Then, after I entered the mythical casino, I saw my companions lying unconscious across the lobby floor. I blacked out again, and they're gone. Elijah blared through my radio again, ordering me to bring the casino's power back online. After wandering for way too long and struggling to figure out how to progress forward and dealing with every emitter in the casino, I finally grabbed the security code I needed to open the electrical closet. The casino hummed to life, and places I couldn't go before were now accessible. I went to the kitchen to find God, but instead found Dog in the midst of a mental break, with each personality swapping control nearly every sentence. I managed to calm them down, brought them to peace, and ended up reconciling the 2 personalities into one. The super mutant that remained had no memory of who I am, or even who they were, but they were grateful for my help, even if they weren't sure what it was I did. I hoofed it to the theater to find Dean. Cornered by holograms, which I had to sneak around, I rescued him by playing a holotape I found on the theater's projector to disable the guards. We linked up, figured out what the hell kind of mess we were in, and he then informed me that he knows how to access the Sierra Madre's vault. Then I made my way to Christine through the executive suites. When I found her, she spoke for the first time. She used an autodoc to repair her vocal cords. Even crazier is the fact that she now sounds like the autodoc's original patron, Vera Keys, a prominent pre-war starlet who resided in the hotel. The final elevator to the casino vault stood dormant in her room, behind an automated voice lock that would only open to a password spoken in Vera Keys' own voice. I traveled back down to the lobby and used the reception terminal to piece together recordings of Vera's songs to unlock the elevator. I took the elevator down. I meandered through maintenance hallways, evading guards and navigating radio denial zones, and finally made my way inside the vault. Before me was a lone computer, with 2 messages left on it from Sinclair, the magnate responsible for building the Sierra Madre to begin with. One message for Vera Keys revealed the true purpose for the casino and its vault. Sinclair, deep in an unreciprocated love for Vera, built the Sierra Madre for her and her alone, a way to protect her as the world around them crumbled. The other message for Dean Domino, a snake in Vera's ear, pushing her to assist him in breaking into the vault in the heist of the century, locks the vault indefinitely, intended to seal him inside forever. Out of curiosity, I read the message, which gave me the bad ending to Dead Money, where I, myself, am locked in the vault for eternity and starved to death inside. Then I reloaded a save so I can actually finish the story. After I read Vera's message and exited the terminal, Elijah appeared on a screen behind it, instead of showing up in person like I expected. In response, I threatened to destroy the vault by detonating my own collar if he didn't come down here and face me in person. My high explosive skill convinced him, and he took the elevator down. But I juked him, and he wandered into the vault alone, sealing himself in there forever. I escaped as the vault and the casino shattered and crumbled around me. I fled down the long path to the villa. The companions I met and struggled with were nowhere to be found. I took one last look at the Sierra Madre on the horizon. I thought about all I had done, what it took from me to get here. I opened the gate and started back to the Mojave, arriving at the abandoned bunker that started it all. A final radio message played.
Sadness. Letting go. Difficult. As a guest of the Sierra Madre, you know that truth more than anyone. Frederick Sinclair believed one's life could be made anew every day, that fortunes were more than the wealth in your hands. Love, life, family, those to care for, and those who will care for you. To those who know these joys, the Sierra Madre holds little they don't already have. Out in the world, beyond these walls, that is your chance to begin again. I hope you'll return in happier times. Until then, the Sierra Madre and I will hold you in our hearts.
I clambered out of the bunker and felt the shimmer of the Mojave sun once again. I retrieved Cassidy from the outpost and returned to the Lucky 38. I talked with Veronica once I got there about what happened, what I saw, that I found Elijah, and witnessed his grim fate. I gave her a final message from him, something for closure. It was a hard watch for her, but she gleaned something from it and gained a bonus perk as a companion. I saved and quit. There was a lot to process because, holy shit, Dead Money is a fucking insano DLC. I can see why people dislike it, but the gameplay strives for a strong survival horror angle, and in a lot of cases it works, but it drifts so far from the typical Fallout formula that it genuinely feels like an entirely different game. It is brutal at parts too, and with more than a few sore spots to wade through. I felt stuck plenty of times, and any time I succeeded, it usually felt like I had just gotten really lucky, which may be the point, though in other survival horror games I played, which isn't much, that sense of accomplishment usually shines through, and it's not 100% there in Dead Money. What is 100% there in Dead Money, though, is the characters. Holy fucking shit, dude. If you just let them, they will yap, and you will be at full attention. Just listening to Father Elijah primed me for how deeply fleshed out every character in Dead Money is. Each one just feels so real, like someone poured thousands of hours of work into making each one a full human being with a life story and worldview. Take Dog and God. The moment that we finally helped them once inside the Sierra Madre has to be one of the most powerful moments in New Vegas, probably any Fallout game. After pushing through everything in the villa and that kitchen in the Sierra Madre, my character helped them find peace and reconcile their trauma. Then take Christine. Her interactions through dialogue floored me. It was such a subversion and a unique way to show that barrier in communication, a barrier that you both slowly whittle down as you talk and spend time with her. There's even a little moment you have, if you picked up the Chausser La Femme perk, right before you depart the switching station and leave her behind, where you hold her hand and tell her you'll come back for her no matter what. That shit tugged at me, dog, goddamn. Then, once inside the casino, she gets her voice back, and for the first time, there's no friction. You learn she's actually a Brotherhood agent hunting Elijah so that he can answer for his past, both for his crimes here and during his time in the Brotherhood. And that this is personal for her, that he broke a relationship with someone she loved. That implied someone being her old friend Veronica. Dean Domino may be the least fleshed out, but that could be because I didn't dive into him as much as the others in this DLC. The late great Barry Dennen still gives a hell of a performance though. Anytime Dean is on screen, he steals the show. That first moment you meet him, where you have to take a seat in a bomb-strapped chair to initiate the conversation, the fact that he walks around with a cig when you're not in combat, he's just fucking aura farming, dude. What a fucking guy. To the few friends who heavily recommended I try Dead Money, yeah, y'all were right, this shit rules. It's not peak Fallout gameplay, but as a character showcase for what that freak Chris Avallone is capable of, it's well worth the price of admission. It's a bit of a mess, but as an outro story straight from Avallone, a role-playing legend responsible for games like Fallout 2 and Planescape Torment, it's a punch to the chest. Dead Money wears its theme on its sleeve, letting go. But below that, there's a story of the human condition and Fallout's own tropes, detailed by Avallone in a 2011 blog post about the design philosophy behind it. The story's core, according to him, is about 4 characters who would, in any other scenario, kill each other for scraps, finally being forced to cooperate via an outside 5th character who does so coercively and with less than holy intentions. With this in mind, even the gameplay begins to make sense. You're scrounging for everything, your power fantasy dismantled. It's easy to think that you might be better off screwing over or murdering your companions for even a shred of an advantage in the fight, but whether you like it or not, you need them. And they need you. Most of New Vegas, and every other Fallout game, is a solitary experience. The world revolves around you, not the other way around. This is the first time in Fallout that I needed my companions, not just for a buff, not just because they have a cool storyline, but because without them, none of us are making it out of here alive. After another 2-day break, I booted the game again to finish up my quest with Cassidy, now that the Sierra Madre power-leveled my lockpicking. I snuck into the Silver Rush, grabbed the evidence, then Cass and I took it to Ranger Jackson at the outpost. He agrees that in exchange for no violence against any parties, he'll send it to the appropriate authorities back west in the NCR. Then, I traveled to the Mojave Drive-In, waited for midnight, and activated the crashed satellite to start Old World Blues. After the intro cutscene, I woke up in a mysterious valley known as Big MT, or Big Mountain, a Los Alamos-esque research facility from before the war. I wandered down the complex further and encountered 5 floating robots with 3 television screens apiece, 2 for the eyes and 1 for the mouth, each robot powered by the brain of a scientist who worked at the facility. These lovely folks filled me in on the situation. I've just had my brain removed. My heart, spine, and other organs have also been replaced with enhanced versions of each. They told me my brain might be in the rival dome facility of a Dr. Mobius, the villain of this story. I begrudgingly accepted the situation and set out to get the specific items they needed to take on Mobius. Before I left, I took a gander at my temporary quarters, known as the Sink, and installed a personality on the central computer that runs the whole thing. Each appliance in this apartment has a distinct human personality powering it, this one being a British butler that, in the most authentically British way, misgenders me. I set up for the first research facility, a transmitter. I killed some robots and other lobotomites on the way, grabbed the transmitter, then moved on. I stopped by a medical facility on the way back to grab another personality tape for the Sink, fought off a few more enemies, grabbed it, then went back to the Sink to install it. It's a tape for the Autodoc, who sounds like a gruff southern doctor who's a little too honest. So far, Old World Blues is fucking funny. There were moments I was genuinely busting a gut.
What is he doing? I think he's sonjaculating into the gun. Getting it warmed up. Ding. Turkey's done. You give it to the lobotomite. I'm not touching that thing.
It's a welcome change of pace from the tone of Dead Money, the whiplash of such being like a double feature that starts with Come and See and immediately follows it up with Talladega Nights. I definitely felt a little over-leveled for this one, the recommended minimum being 15 and up, and I'm already at 30 after finishing up a decent part of the main quest and 2 DLCs. Still, even with the gear, it's decently challenging. The enemies rush you in numbers, and you can't wander too far without getting into a fight. I have enough stim packs stocked to not have to worry about running out, plus items like the Valence headgear are a nice bonus if all else fails. I traveled over to the X8 research facility to grab the next item for the scientist, a few lost data tapes. On the way there, I stopped by the Z9 facility to explore, only to find a bunch of Night Stalkers that I promptly pounded into the dust. I entered the X8 facility, finding a research station for developing cyberdogs not unlike Rex. I knocked out its 2 test chambers, one centered around infiltrating a high school to instill communist ideas on impressionable kids like, I don't know, pronouns, and the other centered around finding a lost audio recording before a cyberdog's atomic core explodes. I didn't find it in time, but I guess I somehow tanked a fucking nuclear bomb, so it was alright in the end. Back at the sink, I healed up, and it's here that I learned I could use the auto dock to respec my traits, which is awesome. Then I booked it to the X13 facility to acquire an advanced stealth infiltration suit. I grabbed the individual parts, and presto, it's ready. I'm met with a lovely robot voice from the suit that happily informs me it can auto-apply stim packs or medics straight from my inventory in combat. The rest of the facility is a similar setup to X8, a test chamber where I have to use the infiltration suit to steal a secret document. I cheated a little bit and used a stealth boy, but my sneak is so low that I needed the insurance. I ran out under fire from Mobius's robot scorpions and returned to the think tank. I informed Dr. Klein, the head scientist, that I had all the lost tech he and the others requested. Using that, he opened the door to the Forbidden Zone so that I could finally take on Mobius. Before I left, I talked with some of the other scientists to get a little more info on the individual characters. There's some really fun interactions, an entire implied sex scene thrown in, it's baller. I stepped out into the big empty again, but only to acquire the last personality tapes for the sync, just to mess around with those. Then I flirted with 2 light switches. Finally, I stepped through the door for the final confrontation with Mobius. It's a proper Vort moment. There's a giant robot scorpion. I activated a terminal to distract it with some targeting drones, then softened it up with every 40mm grenade I had in my inventory. When I had nothing else left, I charged in and beat it to death with my proton axe. It felt pretty awesome. Then I pushed to the next room and confront Mobius. He's a little less coherent than I expected, and turns out he's been messing with the think tank's memories and sending faux threats to keep them contained within the big empty, and from experimenting on the entire wasteland. I take pity on him as he points to my own brain, sitting at the other end of the room, and that whether it goes back into my head is entirely up to it. I chatted with my own brain for a sec. It's a wild moment, an exciting prospect to be able to talk to essentially my own player character for a moment, but it bugs out when he tries to recap the things we've seen.
Jason, Helios 1 coming back online. Jason Bright and his...
Fearing that I had just broken my whole save, I looked up a solution, and it turns out that this specific dialogue option is bugged. So I reloaded the quick save, restarted the conversation, and avoided that one dialogue option, and it worked great. Then I passed a speech and medicine check to slap my brain back into my noggin, and strutted out of Mobius's lab back towards the think tank for one final confrontation. I approached the scientists. They weren't willing to just let me waltz out with my own brain. They needed it themselves to leave the big empty and experiment their way through the Mojave. I successfully convinced them that actually, I'm Mobius's brain in the courier's body, and they seemed to listen then. I convinced them to continue their experiments here, at Big Empty, where they'll have my protection to do so. All's well that ends well. I took one last look at the vast ruins of the Big Empty and activated the teleporter device. Sayonara. Old World Blues is a chortle fest through and through, with so many memorable moments and stellar voice work. Not fucking many! It really felt like an hours-long Futurama special. As a game, it's got plenty of content to dive into, making repeat visits a very worthy prospect. A lot of that content also ties into the main story and other DLCs, like getting to learn the story behind the cyberdogs as I fought my way through the Paw Patrol in multiple dungeons, don't tell Rex. The DLC wraps up with a core theme to tie it all together. The titular old world blues that afflicts inhabitants of the wasteland, keeping them so tied to the pre-war past that they lose focus on the present and future. Big Mountain is the epitome of this idea, a facility that may as well be a slice of pre-war America preserved well into this future. What it says next resonates with what actual real-life physicist Richard Feynman stated in 1955. Science is a key to heaven and hell, and can either help or hurt. We can build nuclear reactors or a nuclear bomb. That's Fallout. Comment, but make them laugh. After finishing Old World Blues, I decided this would be the fuck around function, a shift in focus to some wildcard side quests and just living in the world for a sec. I gambled with little success. I fought some Deathclaws, wandered around, just had some fun. Then I stumbled over to the Omertas, just to see what's going on over there. I talked with a dude named Caccino, a lower level lieutenant in their organization.
I hear you've been asking questions about me, dickweed. What the fuck do you want?
He wasn't super forthcoming, but as soon as I snuck into his room and acquired his journal about under-the-table dealings outside the family business, he seemed a little more willing to talk. He told me all about the Omerta family's plans to destroy the Strip and take it over for themselves, how they've acquired weapons, and were building an army. I found the two guys he then sent me to investigate, Clandon and Troik. The former doesn't say anything, but Troik coughs up info after some persuasion. I convinced him to destroy the weapons himself and moved on. Troik destroyed the weapons after a short waiting period, and then I returned to Caccino. Turns out, before he died Soprano style, Troik ratted out my name to the bosses, Big Sal and Nero, who now wanted a personal meeting with me. I followed him to their office and used it as an opportunity to take both of them out and install Caccino as the new head of the family. In the process, I successfully lied to Big Sal, convincing him to take out Nero, making things easier for myself and Caccino. From there, I moved on to the White Glove Society over at the Ultralux. I walked in and met a rancher named Heck Gunderson, who was looking for a son that disappeared somewhere in the casino. I offered to take up the search and to let him know what I found. I asked around and learned about another private eye looking into a separate disappearance. I talked with the right folks and gained access to his room, only to find him dead, with nothing but a matchbook with a meeting place and time scrawled inside. I'm immediately ambushed by White Glove goons, but a lead pipe I managed to steal from behind the cashier's desk proved handy. I showed up at the meeting place and waited for the contact. He came. Turns out he was the private eye's informant and broke the news to me that the White Glove is torn in two, between the few who want to return to its traditional cannibalistic ways and the majority who want to abandon it. He told me how to get into the members-only section, and what I might be able to do to stop the cannibals' leader, Mortimer, from following through on his plans to serve human meat at a banquet. I snuck down below and convinced a guard that I'm just there to repair some pipes. Then, in an impromptu therapy session, I convinced the head chef to leave his post and took over preparing the meal with his own recipe for imitation human meat. I didn't have any medics on me, so I wasn't able to drug the wine like I hoped. I called down the head waiter and served the food to the guests. Then I set Ted Gunderson free and had him follow me up to the members-only section. We waited for Mortimer to finish his speech, then sprung the trap. With no one actually having eaten human meat, Mortimer having confessed to his own crimes, I let Yes Man know that the White Gloves and Omertas are sorted out. I gotta say, fucking around in a Discord call with my friend Aiden and just knocking out these two side quests felt great after throwing myself at DLC after DLC. I had an opportunity to live in this world for a sec and ground myself after being away from it for so long. To be totally honest, I went in thinking that these would be relatively chill quests I can knock out and move on from in a couple hours, and in a lot of ways they were, but I wasn't expecting the insane depth of dialogue they would shower me with. With the Omertas, my high speech helped me convince the two bosses to turn on each other in the moment, even as they had their guns cocked and aimed at my soon-to-be twice-shot head. Before that, I could convince everyone involved to do the dirty work of sabotaging the bosses' plans themselves, instead of sullying my own hands. All things I could do in the moment in a way that felt organic and instilled that sense of agency. The White Gloves quest immediately had me with the noir stylings and plot beats, like finding the body of another PI, complete with the hat, trenchcoat, and matchbook with plot info. The same high-skilled dialogue options also brought that same organic flow to the story and felt kick-ass to pull off in the moment. The character I built and the way I had allocated my points and leveling really took center stage in these quests. I can already imagine coming back to these with totally different mindsets and character builds, and getting entirely different experiences. It started to make sense why people would replay this game over and over again. The character system just adds that much variety. From there, it was a long trek to Red Rock Canyon, where I'd seek an audience with the Great Khans. Once there, I located the longhouse where Papa Khan and his followers gather. I learned that Carl, an ambassador from the Legion, has also embedded with the Khans. He's there to foster an alliance between the two in the coming battle with the NCR. I also learned the history of the Khans and where their hatred of the NCR stemmed from during the massacre at Bitter Springs. Regis then informed me that despite how much he hates the NCR, just as much as any other Khan, he's not so sure about aligning with the Legion, given their storied history of duping small tribes into enslavement and exploitation on the promise of glory and wealth. He took me aside as I left the Longhouse and explained that if I can find evidence proving Carl has less than savory intentions, he'll back me in pushing Papa Khan to break the alliance. I found that evidence conveniently stowed in a footlocker in Carl's quarters. He also told me of 3 other advisors I needed to convince. Siblings Jack and Diane, who run the Khan's drug lab, and Melissa, a scout perched above Quarry Junction. My high speech skill was enough to convince both parties, but Melissa proved a little tricky to reach since I misread the map and thought she was inside Quarry Junction itself. I was fully prepared to wander into that mess, which I thought I was leveled enough for. I'm sure I'm not the first nor the last to make that mistake. With all parties convinced, and Carl, a dead body in the corner, I convinced Papa Khan that the Legion would only hang the Khans out to dry as soon as they're no longer convenient. In search of former glory, the great Khans make the tough choice to leave the Mojave for greener pastures. To be perfectly honest, the Great Khan's quest didn't feel as deep as either the Omertas or White Glove quests. All it amounted to was showing up to the right spots and saying a line of dialogue. Maybe I'm falling into that same trap again. Maybe I could have taken a different approach and messed with those systems to get a different outcome, but I still felt like the Khans just don't stand up to how deep other factions in New Vegas can feel. It didn't help that this seemed like one of the more broken quests, with things happening out of order and characters not reacting to things I know, have, or have done, unlike other quests. Anyway, Khan sorted, is boomer time. I definitely navigated the rocket artillery range outside the gate to Nellis Air Force Base, using the knowledge I gained before in retrieving a Brotherhood mission tape. I arrived at the gate in one piece and was immediately taken to their leader, Mother Pearl, who sees my arrival as a sign of the times and enlists my help around the base. I took care of their generator problem with my high repair skill and high beat the shit out of ants skill, then took some time to learn their history over at the museum. I also helped Jack find his Janet. Loyal then enlisted my help in bringing up a submerged B-29 superfortress from the depths of Lake Mead. Getting there was rough. I tried going through the old rail tunnel to cut south, but it's chock full of mines and glowing ones. The real salt in the wound, though, I got jumped by a squad of Deathclaws on the other side. I had to tuck tail and run, then fast travel to Vault 34 to take a different route. The lakeshore had some funky lake monsters and cazadores galore, but I made it to the boat launch and swallowed my submechanophobia to dive below. I placed the ballast, returned to shore, and brought this 7.0 battle rating monster up from the depths. I returned to Nellis. Loyal was stoked to hear about the bombers resurfacing and sent robots out to transport the aircraft piece by piece. Pearl thanked me for my help and promised the boomers aid in the coming fight for Hoover Dam. The Boomers quest is up there and thrilling. My only gripe is that Nellis is just too fucking big. Otherwise, there's a solid handful of fun things to see and do that makes them prime for sinking your teeth into. Look, they're xenophobic, they love explosives, they live in a rundown Air Force base. I mean shit, that's just Patriots Landing, I'm home. Patriots Landing is a base housing subdivision at Scott Air Force Base, where I lived for 6 years as a kid. It's housing meant for lower enlisted and their families, so if there's any poor neighborhood on an Air Force base, it's Patriots. I often joke to my friends about it being my O block, even though they're not remotely comparable. I jumped back over to the Lucky 38 and let Yes Man know what's what. With all tribes accounted for, the next phase of the plan could begin. I'm to help prevent the NCR president's assassination because that's just bad business, and then attach an override module to the El Dorado substation that would divert power to the Lucky 38 and jumpstart its latent reactor. Once that reactor was online and running, we'd boost transmission output for my Securitron Army's command and control. I started with saving the president. It's relatively easy to thwart, and I tried to RP a little and talk with some of the folks present, but from previous runs and watching other friends play this game, I remembered exactly where the Legion sniper would appear, and just put myself in the right spot at the right time. From there, I traveled to the El Dorado substation. A relatively easy sneak mission, I slapped on the old world blue stealth suit and applied a stealth boy, and installed the override chip right under the NCR troopers' noses. With everything set, I returned to Yes Man, who promptly notified me that the Legion is massing an army at a staging area near the dam. The battle is on the horizon. Before I do that, though, there's some business I have to settle. I traveled to the canyon wreckage west of Prim and entered the Divide. I gazed out upon a stormy, bombed-out hellscape. Ahead of my path stood an abandoned missile silo, and inside, a lone Eyebot named Eddie. Eddie had an R2-D2 vibe, full of adventure and whimsy, a contrast to everything present so far in the Divide. We continued forward together, and after we left the bunker, a voice took over it. It's Courier 6, going by the name Ulysses, the courier who refused to carry the platinum chip. He gave me a little more info on the world, what to expect, and where to find him for our final showdown. We crept through the wasteland, fighting marked men, tunnelers, deathclaws, and occasionally Ulysses popped in through Eddie to spoon-feed some lore. After a rough journey filled to the brim with tough enemies and a dusting of radiation, we make it to the foot of Ulysses' temple. As soon as we got close, though, he took full control of Eddie, leaving me alone for the final stretch. I fought my way through ever more deathclaws and marked men, then entered the temple and rescued Eddie. I entered the grand chamber. Ulysses stood before an arsenal of ICBMs, ready to unleash hell on the NCR and the Mojave for the sins I supposedly committed during the destruction of the Divide. Over the course of the story, I had learned that the Divide was a thriving community, a settlement I had a hand in building, that I inadvertently destroyed when a piece of technology I carried activated multiple underground nuclear warheads. The ensuing chaos cracked the earth and shattered the Divide in an instant. I managed to convince Ulysses that what occurred here at the Divide didn't rest on my shoulders. It was an accident, one I couldn't have prevented even if I wanted to. In its place, I can build New Vegas into something free and beautiful, a second chance to build a home in the Mojave for everyone. He listened and agreed, but first we had to fend off an assault from marked men who came to cut off our escape. We defeated the marked men together, but the missile still stood primed and counting down to launch. I pondered for a sec what to do with it. At first, I considered redirecting it to the Legion, destroying or at least weakening an enemy I'm about to face at Hoover Dam. Then I realized I'd be showering nuclear hellfire on innocent civilians just as much as military targets. I thought about what Ulysses had said of the old world, how these missiles are the epitome of its flaws and glory, and realized I wouldn't want to repeat what made that world destroy itself in the first place. I chose to disarm the missile, but I couldn't do it myself. Eddie, however, could. The caveat being, it would destroy him in the process. In a tearful goodbye, my best friend throughout this quest sacrificed himself to save the world, one last time. I left the Divide with one final message from Ulysses, part goodbye, part explanation for his actions.
My message is this: the destruction that has been wrought at the Divide, or elsewhere, if you couldn't stop me, it can happen again. It will keep happening. If war doesn't change, men must change, and so must their symbols. Even if it is nothing at all, know what you follow, courier. Just as I followed you to the end. Whatever your symbol, carry it on your back and wear it proudly when you stand at Hoover Dam.
As the climactic final DLC for New Vegas, Lonesome Road certainly fits the bill. It's tough. Every enemy, the marked ones, your classic Deathclaws, and the new enemy type, the Tunnelers, are a bitch and a half to fight. The latter becomes especially horrifying when Ulysses tells you they'll be emerging all over the Mojave soon, not just in the Divide. Gameplay-wise, they're difficult and not super interesting to fight, and I found the flashbang mechanics not really all that effective or clear, and anytime I succeeded against them, it just felt like luck, the kind of fighting where Fallout is at its weakest. Lonesome Road is also a super heady story. Ulysses always speaks to you in this poetically cryptic voicing and waxes philosophical about old world ideals. I still found him interesting, and the sprinkling in of both his and the player character's origin stories felt really cool to see. The DLC's themes, especially given its place as an endgame DLC you'll usually play shortly before the final battle, do give it weight. Ulysses wants to make it crystal clear that looking back to history and why the old world collapsed in the way it did can and will play a role in how the courier shapes the future of the Mojave. It doesn't quite hit the same emotional and thematic chords Dead Money seemed to hit, and the difficulty felt more artificial at that. It still felt worth it to play and feels like a suitable wrap-up to the parallel story within New Vegas' DLCs. Now, it's time. There's no more beating around the bush. I approached Yes Man at the Lucky 38 and told him I'm ready to take on both the Legion and the NCR at Hoover Dam. He handed me another override chip to bring to the dam's power control room, where I can either direct that power to the Legion fort and awaken the robot army slumbering beneath it to decimate their numbers, or destroy the dam's power generators outright, rendering the entire facility useless. I traveled to the dam for the final confrontation, Boone and Rex at my side. We charged in with one of my Securitron soldiers, taking on the first wave of Legion troops. Rex fought bravely, but succumbed to his wounds. I pushed forward with Boone and the Securitron up to the control room entrance and entered the dam. As I entered, I heard the Boomer's plane flying above, dropping ordnance on Legion troops as I ran through the maintenance corridors. I encountered 2 NCR heavy troopers in power armor, but convinced them to head topside to assist Colonel Moore in a bold-faced lie. I entered the control room, installed the chip, and told Yes Man to direct the power to the dormant fort army. Then I flipped the switch in the generator room. I returned topside in time for the B-29 to make another pass and caught it raining hell and Legion reinforcements pushing onto the dam. I linked up with a few more of my Securitron troops and entered the fort proper, taking a chainsaw I found on one of the dead legionaries. We pushed through the camp, making short work of any Praetorian guard we crossed. Finally, I encountered Legate Lanius, Caesar's war chief. Using my high speech skill, I convinced him that holding the west and the east would be a futile effort, given how much effort it took for a failed assault on the dam. He listened, then retreated, vowing to return again someday. I walked back to the fort's gate, only for it to explode as NCR Rangers breached and poured in. General Oliver greeted me, ecstatic for my role in Caesar's defeat, and expected my loyalty. At that moment, my own Securitron army flooded in behind him. and I made one point clear. This land is ours. Leave. Pissed beyond belief, the NCR forces in the Mojave retreated back to California, leaving a free and independent New Vegas behind. Roll credits. The weight at this moment felt palpable. I had been playing this game for close to a month now and working on this video for nearly 2, taking detailed notes and collecting my thoughts on every little detail as I went along. All of that would culminate here, in this final quest, the ending to New Vegas. But as I played it, something just felt off. Something felt empty. This was the culmination of every decision I had made up to this point. Every faction I had interacted with and how I did so would have an effect on what happens here. I saw my upgraded Securitrons. I saw the Boomer's B-29 flying above. Boone was with me, and so was Rex. I picked up a fucking chainsaw. So when Legate Lanius bowed to my superior wisdom, and General Oliver fled back to Cali with his tail between his legs, why did I feel nothing when the credits rolled? I really hoped this moment would affect me. I wished watching the slideshow set to Ron Perlman's narration would strike some kind of chord, but I think my one fatal flaw came back to bite me in the ass. I can appreciate New Vegas for its themes, what it has to say about power, and those who wield it. But those themes are nothing without characters for me to attach to and explore those themes with. The ending would have played out the same whether or not I brought my companions. Could have brought Boone, Cassidy, Veronica, or anyone, and the exact same set pieces would have happened. The characters I fight are just as lifeless. Even Legate Lanius just feels like some dude. Do I maybe hear the name of once or twice in the run-up to the battle? The only moment that felt like it had any serious weight was the final confrontation with General Oliver, where I made my stand and told him that New Vegas is and will always be free. And even then, General Oliver is just some dude. This feels wrong. I've had such a change of heart with New Vegas over this entire run. I've engaged with its themes, taken in its stories, learned to love its characters, and felt my own player character go through an entire compelling emotional arc. Yet, right here, at the climactic battle, foreshadowed from beginning to end, this is where it falls flat for me. And I want to know why. Here we are. The end. I played all of New Vegas and all of its additional content. I brought in my knowledge and new life experience from other RPGs and tabletop. I engaged with its role-playing mechanics in ways I never had before. I began connecting with its themes and suddenly felt a personal connection I never could have felt without the life experience I have now. I then explored that personal connection, self-analyzed, and used it as a vessel for telling a story through my character. I consumed parts of the game that I didn't have access to before, either because of time or money, and found that in a game with a legacy like New Vegas, there will still be low points. I also played one of the most compelling and emotional stories I've ever experienced in a game, and felt genuinely moved by the experience. I then took time to have a laugh, and remembered that Fallout's humor still defines it compared to more serious post-apocalyptic fiction. And at the end, I still couldn't get anything from it. The problem with Fallout New Vegas, to me, is that its ending spurns its characters. In a game like Mass Effect 2, the choice of who you bring with you has a serious impact on the outcome of the whole game, and each character has a moment to shine and make their mark on the story. Even if we consider New Vegas a lonelier experience where your companions aren't supposed to have a huge impact on the way the story plays out, there's Dark Souls 3, quite possibly one of the loneliest atmospheres out there. And yet I still think about the End of Fire, and how that ending brings in the Firekeeper, your closest ally throughout the entire experience, for a heartbreakingly defining moment in the close of a trilogy. The part that stings the most is that New Vegas' companions are some of the best written in the franchise, with some of the strongest stories and connections to the overarching themes. If the people I get to directly bond with throughout the game don't have any agency by the time the climax comes around, then what's the point of bonding with them at all? New Vegas' ending, in reality, is about the factions, not your companions. The effects you do get to see are all set pieces that depend on the choices you made regarding those factions. That's your primary way to influence the ending, whether you played nice to the Boomers, the Brotherhood, the Khans, etc., etc. Then you might get to see Brotherhood Paladins fighting next to you, or a B-29 flying above. That sounds awesome, right? But New Vegas wasn't just about the NCR, the Legion, the Securitrons, the Boomers or Khans or the Brotherhood. New Vegas was about Boone. It was about Cassidy. It was about Lily, Rex, Veronica, the King, Yes Man, Mr. House, Caesar, Benny, Doc Mitchell, Sonny Smiles, Victor, Joshua Graham, Father Elijah, Dog and God, Christine, Dean Domino, the Think Tank, Dr. Mobius, Ulysses, Eddie. I don't know, dude. The real Hoover Dam was the friends we made along the way. Still, one question remains. The most important question. The single question defining this whole video. Do I like New Vegas now? I'm gonna hit you with the big fat it depends. On one end of the scale, New Vegas is a solid RPG with so many deep systems to play around with and ways to engage with your own character. On the other end, the same issue at least partially stands. I spent a lot more time talking and engaging with characters this time around and really found myself engrossed with them. But the ending flat out ignoring all of that in favor of grand spectacle just left a sour taste in my mouth. And on the secret third end of the scale, Dead Money fucking rules. So I think I'll leave y'all with this. I like New Vegas more than I did before. I learned to appreciate a lot of what it had to offer and found myself loving the journey, even if the destination didn't feel all that satisfying. So thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me that you sat through this whole thing. This is easily the biggest video project I've ever tackled myself, not just on YouTube, but probably ever. If you liked it even a little, please subscribe and leave a like, and perhaps even hit that bell. If you really like the video and want to support the channel going forward, you can become a patron on my brand new Patreon. For $4 a month, you get early access to all my videos, behind the scenes updates on videos in progress, a shout out at the end of every video, and access to exclusive patron benefits in my brand new Discord server. You'll find links for my Patreon and my Discord in the description below. I'll wrap this up with a huge thank you to my first patron, Cameron, who begged for the right to be the first one as soon as it went live. Thank you for taking the time to sit with me and talk about New Vegas and keeping me excited to finish this absolute monster of a video. I'd also like to thank my friend Tony and my brother Brad for also chatting me up in their interviews. Genuinely, without them, the video would not have turned out anywhere near as fleshed out. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of my newest friends, Juniper Fox, who hit me up after seeing my Tarkov video for advice on her own project series detailing her own transition, which she just finished. I'm grateful to have made a new friend in this space, and her own passion for what she made helped push me through this video in turn. And finally, I want to personally thank my mom and dad for supporting me throughout this whole thing. Seriously, they've been in my corner every time I've needed it the most, and I couldn't have made this video without them, in every sense of the phrase. Thank you both from the bottom of my heart. And please stay tuned. If you like what I'm doing, I am happy to do more. I have a whole list of ideas to pull from. Let me know what you'd be interested in seeing next. Some ideas from the hat include a Fallout 3 video in the same vein as this one, a Dark Souls analysis, and reworking a Medal of Honor 2010 video essay I scrapped. But I am more than happy to hear whatever you think I should tackle in the comments below. Bye! The things the kids are wearing now, it's true. Don't do a thing for me. Bring back memories of when I wore the things only 'cause I had to.